Welcome back. A son and his wife are rudely awakened by his mother, who shows up unannounced early on a weekend morning. Despite giving her keys in case of emergencies, the mother abuses their trust and ignores boundaries. In an attempt to justify her behavior, she sends a long, gaslighting text message to her son, calling him and his wife inconsiderate and impolite. Other commenters share similar stories of intrusive mother-in-laws with boundary issues. Moral of the story: some mother-in-laws have weird ideas about boundaries, and it's best to set them straight early on to avoid awkward encounters. Mother-in-law shows up unannounced early in the morning on a weekend. I've been reading about parents showing up unannounced at their children's doorsteps, and I never understood why anyone would think this is acceptable behavior. This happened to my husband this weekend, where his mom called multiple times at 8 in the morning while we were both sleeping. My husband didn't pick up, as we were both still sleeping, and then got a text from mother-in-law asking if she could be picked up, as she dropped her car off for maintenance for the next couple of hours. Husband, being annoyed, told her no because he's still sleeping. We both tried to go back to sleep, and an hour later, we hear her shout outside our bedroom door announcing her arrival. Needless to say, husband and I are both pissed, and he went down to speak to her. Her response was he doesn't love his family. I can't wrap my head around why any parent would not think this is the most invasive and unacceptable behavior to subject your child to. She is absolutely insane. What hurts me the most was we gave her the keys in case of emergency, and she completely abused it and lost our trust. There's really no going back after this, especially with her refusing to understand our point of view and no remorse at all. Anyone care to explain this behavior? Update. Thank you everyone for your 2 cents and those who shared your stories. Made me feel less alone and helped with fighting against her guilt trips and gaslighting. Quick update. She unsurprisingly sent my husband a long text message trying to gaslight the both of us. Said she did feel embarrassed by shouting outside her bedroom door, but did it anyway, and proceeded to call both me and my husband inconsiderate and impolite because we didn't come down to greet her. She was mad because we decided to stay in bed to try to go back to sleep that she disturbed, but couldn't, so we were in bed resting and chatting before husband went down to yell at her for her lack of boundaries an hour later. Her justification for showing up unannounced was that husband didn't pick up her call at 8 in the morning on a weekend, and that if he picked up and let her know she wasn't invited, she wouldn't have shown up. Are you effing kidding me? Not picking up and know I'm sleeping is not an invitation. Ended the text message by calling both of us selfish, and also had to mention that we go eat at high-end restaurants. Not sure how that's relevant except a blatant display of jealousy. And yes, we do treat her to the same high-end restaurants that we go to, because we like sharing good places to eat with friends and family. She also didn't forget to drag me into her issues with her son and called me cold, rude, and impolite because I never came out of my bedroom to cater to her needs. At least now I know this isn't just a boundary communication issue. She's just bat crazy. Let's see what the community thinks about some of this. We have a comment from Weeping Somnambulist. My normally low-key mom did the mother-in-law burst in unannounced at awkward time at least once to her normally very assertive daughter-in-law, with me in tow. I lived far away and was just visiting at the time, and clueless. Let's go see daughter-in-law and grandkid. Okay. We show up to the house and daughter-in-law is having dinner with a friend and very surprised. So we sit there awkwardly while they eat. I still have no idea if this was a usual thing or just a weird one-off. Some mother-in-laws may have some odd ideas about boundaries and expectations after their adult kid leaves the house, gets married, and especially after the grandkids are born. We have another comment from Look, it's frickin' bats. My future mother-in-law was coming to my house for the first time, and it was a 6.5-hour drive. The plan was the weekend, which to me is Saturday. My significant other calls her and tells her we will see her Saturday. She loses her gosh darn mind and yells at him to find his own way home. She was his ride back. She hung up and wouldn't answer his texts or calls. We assumed she wasn't coming. The next morning, he calls and checks in, and she was already on her way. She never even asked me, and at the time I was too shy and scared to contact her myself after how she talked to him. When she finally gets here, she comes in and clasps her hands in my face and begs me to let her stay. Then complains that she told my significant other she was coming this weekend and Friday is the weekend. The entire weekend was a crap show and ruined my relationship with my future mother-in-law. The entire trip for her, including coming early, was 100% to show us that she has the control and our boundaries don't matter, and she will do what she wants when she wants. I won't be falling for that one again. Update. Mother-in-law is hyper-possessive over her son. She has always disliked me and would talk crap about me to her son, my husband. My husband shuts it down every time, but she does it anyway. She also consistently sends emotionally abusive texts to my husband whenever they get into arguments and go low contact or no contact briefly before things blow over in a couple of weeks. Recently, she has violated our boundary completely by walking into our house early morning on a weekend when we were both still asleep in bed with the emergency key we left her. Big mistake. She refuses to understand boundaries and lives in a false reality where mothers can do no wrong. In the last month, she called, texted my husband, and he ignored completely. She then texted me to check in on her son since she couldn't reach him. I didn't want to give her an excuse to call the cops on us, so I responded to let her know we're good. Unsurprisingly, she still showed up at the door last night demanding to come in and chat. Husband at first refused, but she wouldn't take no for an answer, so she eventually came in to talk. Arguments erupted, and things got physical from her end. She taunted us to call the cops on her if we wanted her to leave. My husband always wanted to maintain a civil relationship, but safe to say we're going no contact for the foreseeable future. I'm so happy since I've always wanted to go no contact, but would have never asked that of my husband. I knew if I just waited out, she would eventually self-sabotage, and today was the day. Let's see some more community reactions. Own Brother 2559 says, if she got physical with you and dear husband, I'd make a report at the police station so that there is a documented history of her becoming violent. She sounds like the type to lose her mind when she doesn't get her way. Better to be prepared. Ray6672 says, boundaries are necessary. Actions have consequences. She fails to see because she can't separate her wants and desires and needs from the reality that her baby is a freaking married adult man who has a life that doesn't revolve around her. Good on you guys for going no contact. Violence is never acceptable. She resorted to the lowest form of interaction out of ignorance and jealousy and selfishness. This isn't the end. She will play victim, but you guys have to put up a good front. Maintain it because the next play will be flying monkeys and her being sick. Cardinal29 chimes in, seconding getting a police report. Seriously, it's better to have it documented and not need it than to regret not having when she inevitably pulls some BS. There will be a next time, sadly. It's always the same with these mother-in-laws. She taunted us to call the cops on her if we wanted her to leave. Especially because of this implied threat. Please, get your husband to make a report. You can see where she's going with this. She's willing to lie to the police. Your husband could end up spending the night in jail while it all gets straightened out. It would be great if you can get a doorbell camera too. The locks on the doors should really be rekeyed as well, just in case she made a copy of the key. Oh, sure, because nothing says loving and respectful family relationship like barging into someone's home unannounced and demanding their immediate attention, right? I mean, why bother respecting boundaries or common courtesy when you can just prioritize your own convenience and desires? Sounds like a totally reasonable and mature way to behave. OP, it's understandable for you and your husband to be upset about mother-in-law's behavior. Showing up unannounced at someone's home, especially early in the morning, is intrusive and disrespectful of their privacy and boundaries. The fact that she touted outside your bedroom door is even more invasive and shows a lack of consideration for your sleeping habits. It's unfortunate that your mother-in-law didn't understand your perspective and reacted negatively when your husband tried to communicate his frustration with her behavior. Her refusal to acknowledge her mistake and take responsibility for her actions only adds to the problem. As for the other stories shared, they demonstrate that this type of behavior is not uncommon, and some mother-in-laws may have difficulty respecting boundaries and accepting changes in their child's life. It's important to establish clear boundaries and communicate them effectively to avoid misunderstandings and conflicts in the future. Are you tired of dealing with a toxic mother-in-law or parents who don't understand your in-laws? Look no further. Step into my parlor for some sisterly advice from someone with a just no mom. But be prepared, this may be a long journey, so grab a cup of tea, coffee, or your preferred beverage, and let's get started. Is your partner very low to no contact? Do you find yourself encouraging them to have a relationship? Are your parents fine but don't understand the in-laws? Or do you have a well-meaning but overbearing mother? Step into my parlor for a bit of sisterly advice from someone with a just no mom. Note: partner here means boy, girl, non-binary friend, spouse, long-term committed partner, significant other, etc., etc. First, a bit of background about me. Also note, I'm making a lot of generalities here, but they seem to be common amongst my experience and what I read here and elsewhere. I'm on the other side of life now, a mid-50s woman. I'm married to a man late 40s, 6-year difference, ironic because that was the same situation with my mother and father. I'm child-free and an only child. This is important because my mother desperately wanted to be a grandmother. She died alone and never becoming a grandmother. I don't regret not having children. Again, this is important because I was only whatever it was I could be or do for my mother. I was not my own person to her. My father was never in my life until my late 30s, and even then, not so much. and I have gone back to no contact. When my husband met me, he couldn't understand why I was so adamant about keeping no contact, or at a minimum arm's length, with my mother. He'd tell me the usual BS. You'll regret it when she's gone. She did her best, and you only have one mother, along with, you should really call her. I'm sure she misses you, blah, blah, blah. First of all, those are all rug-sweeping comments and myths that people believe about other people who are low to no contact with their parents. It's rug-sweeping because it excuses their unacceptable behavior and invalidates our very real and lived abusive experience. It's like trying to use the ignorance of the law as a defense. However, it's not a defense because even if you do something illegal that you didn't know was illegal, you're still held responsible, and the same goes for parents. You're still responsible for your actions regardless of what intent you had behind those actions. When my husband met my mother, he understood. However, the point was driven home when he tried to gently tell me, no offense, but I don't like your mother, then had a defensive posture thinking I'd defend her or attack him. I simply yelled out to him, I don't either. Now you get it. If you had a good relationship with your parents, fantastic. I'm genuinely happy for you because I wouldn't wish upon you what I had. My husband did, and I was accepted into his family and have a great relationship with my in-laws. My father-in-law has since passed away, unfortunately, and my mother-in-law, bless her, is in memory care in a nursing facility. It's why he, and very likely you, don't understand the dynamics of your partner and their relationship to their parents. The general rule of thumb here is that you follow your partner's lead with regards to their parents, especially when they are no contact or keep very low contact with their parents. We know our parents better than you and know just killing them with kindness won't work. These parents are abusive, plain and simple. They have trained us to the best of their ability to allow them to run roughshod over us with no boundaries. These parents feel ultimate authority over their children, even as adults, and we've been conditioned to have zero boundaries. Boundaries mean these abusive parents have to be held accountable, and they don't want to be held accountable for anything. They're entitled to any and everything of their children, even as adults, and won't take no for an answer. And they're used to it because they're the parents. Note how I distinctively used children and then added even as adults. These parents do not view their children as adults. They view us as still children. Oh, sure, we're now old enough to get married, yada yada, but they still view us as children who need their guidance. These are emotional toddlers in adult bodies. They throw tantrums when they don't get their way or when boundaries are placed. They rage when an outsider, that's you, my dear friend, comes in and changes the dynamics. Since they know they have conditioned and trained their children to allow them to do as they please, you then become the enemy because surely their precious child wouldn't say no to them, their parents. Some of us, myself being one of them, already know how our parents are. Others are still in the fog about everything and don't realize that they're in an extremely abusive situation. Some know it's abusive, but refuse to get out for whatever their reasons are. Maybe they believe the myth about family is everything. As an adult recovering from CPTSD and an extremely abusive mother, though nothing physical but still extremely abusive, I understand that if you have a crap family, family isn't everything. Family is what you make it. But that's me. Please trust your partner when they say they want no contact or to keep extremely low contact with their parents. No, your love and kindness won't change a dang thing. Nothing against you, because it's not you. It's our abusive and entitled parents. No amount of killing them with kindness will sway them. You give an inch, they demand and expect the moon. And when delivered the moon, they still aren't happy. Save your energy for your newfound family with your partner. Build that happy family or break the cycle of abuse with yourself and your new family with your partner. If your partner is still in the fog and insisting on a relationship with their abusive family, you have every right to put your foot down and say no. In fact, if you're not married, don't get married until they can put their abusive parents in their place as extended family, because they are extended family now. This is something entitled and abusive parents do not like. As the sidebar says, it's easier to dump a mama's boy or girl than to divorce one. Okay, I shortened it. Remember, the in-laws are emotional toddlers in adult bodies. Emotionally mature people do not act the way these just knows act. Another thing about abusive people, gifts are not gifts in the way that mature people give gifts. They are strings that abusive people use to attach to you so that they can pull and yank when they want something from you. Note, every time the in-laws bring up what they did for you and so now you have to do for them what they want, note, they're not owed anything unless you actually did borrow money from them. Pay them back. They can't hold anything over you. Just about everything is transactional for these people. If you can avoid it, do not move in with the in-laws if you already know they're horrible people. they will hold this time over you to manipulate you to do something for them that they want. So, if you find yourself encouraging your partner to call or keep in touch or contact or whatever with their parents, please do yourself and your partner a favor and stop. First, you're being a just no here when we already know just how crappy our parents are. You're invalidating your partner's lived experience with abusive parents and pushing them towards abuse. I can't tell you how angry it would make me when my husband would insist on a relationship of me and my mother. He didn't, and you don't get it. It's frustrating for us because you're supposed to be on our side, on our team. Team members don't want other team members to be abused. Why are you pushing us towards it? So please stop. Secondly, you are wasting time and energy on an unfixable situation and will only cause yourself much grief when, over years, you still can't get your in-laws to love you and treat you with respect. Remember, these are emotional toddlers. They don't even respect themselves, let alone anyone else. Trust me on this. Your parents and your parental in-laws aren't entitled to a relationship with your children. I'm child-free, always have been and always will be. Even so, I had already made up my mind that if I did change my mind about having kids, my mother was not going to be in their lives. She abused me. If she abused her own child, I knew she would abuse my child. As a child-free woman in the US, I have come to the understanding that this insistence on women having children by our parents, possible partners, family, friends, and coworkers, and society in general is an entitlement. It's an entitlement of our bodies, of the bodies of men, and of the bodies of our children. When we put in that perspective, it sort of changes the view of having children, in my opinion. It's a privilege to be a grandparent. A effing privilege. My mother demanded use of my body and my partner's body for herself, either as her retirement plan or to give her grandchildren. That's a really twisted view of having children, right? I agree. But that was the reality I was facing with my abusive mother. Her demands of my person and body, and, by extension, my husband's too. No one has a right to our person and our bodies. No one. Only ourselves. So, save yourselves if your partner and prospective life partner has not differentiated themselves from their parents. If they're enmeshed, it will be extremely hard for them to separate. My mother was enmeshed with me, but I was not enmeshed with her. I saw her for the monster she was. It just took me a minute or two to help my husband understand the monster she was. If you don't understand why your partner does not have a close relationship with his parents, that's okay. Simply take it for what it is and leave it alone. Don't do any encouragement or whatever. Let them handle their parents. We know them better than you do. Trust me on this. I'm here to help you not waste your time or energy on abusive people. And if your partner can't see them for what they are, you deserve better. You deserve a partner that is mentally and emotionally available for you. Adults enmeshed with their parents are not mentally and emotionally available for you, and trust me on this, you won't win. Oh, sure, every other time they're sweet, attentive, yada yada. But once mommy or daddy yank that chain, you're second in their life and always will be until they can break free. Also, it's not your responsibility to be the one to help them break free. You'll just play into the narrative their parents are feeding them that you're just trying to take your partner away from their family. You have every right to have a fully formed partner in life. Adults and mature individuals can and do have these relationships where everyone is loving, respectful, and accepting of each other's individual lives while being able to come together as a whole extended family. I have that with my husband and his parents and sister. I did not have that with my mother. A note about culture. I'm Mexican American. I deeply understand how enmeshed some of our families can be. I know that in other cultures, there are also demands of adult children that I do come from a Western view of individualism. Here's the thing. Toxicity and abuse is widespread amongst all and any cultures. Being a differentiated human being is beyond and above culture. There are healthy and toxic relationships within every culture. You'll have to judge what's going on within your culture. I watched Dr. Ramani on YouTube, and while she talks about narcissism specifically, I see that what she talks about is often the case with abusive people. I was watching a video where she said that while whatever language is spoken, when translated, they all say the exact same things. It's universal. It's why culture is not really an explanation or an excuse here. You don't have to tolerate abuse of any sort just because the person is family. Being family does not entitle them to you or your children and spouse. Relationships are a privilege that applies to you as well. This post is a thoughtful and insightful reflection of the complex dynamics that can exist between adult children and their parents. The author highlights the challenges faced by those who have experienced abuse or difficult relationships with their parents, and the difficulty that some people may have in understanding these dynamics. The post also emphasizes the importance of respecting a partner's decisions regarding their relationship with their parents, even if those decisions involve low or no contact. Overall, the post offers useful advice and encouragement for those who may be struggling with similar situations. Firstly, the idea that we should prioritize mental health and emotional well-being is a crucial one. Mental health is just as important as physical health, yet it often receives less attention and resources. It's important to recognize that taking care of our emotional health is not a luxury or a self-indulgence. It's a necessity. Secondly, the post makes a good point about the need for self-awareness. Understanding our emotions or thought patterns and our triggers can help us identify areas where we need to focus our attention and energy. This self-awareness can also help us be more empathetic and understanding towards others. Finally, I think the post is also highlighting the importance of self-care. This can include things like exercise, eating well, getting enough sleep, and engaging in activities that bring us joy and relaxation. Taking care of ourselves is not only good for our mental health, but it also enables us to better show up for others and contribute to the world around us. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you found our show both informative and enjoyable from start to flow. If you have questions or comments, just let us know in the section below. We're ready to go. See you next time on rLounge.